Hello, I'm Imogen and today I'll be talking about camera shots used in crime detective movies. I'll mainly be focusing on crime detective movies because that is what we're doing for our opening 2 minutes for our coursework. I'll also be using another TV programme and another film which aren't crime detective movies, but I couldn't leave them out. Okay, starting off with the movie Seven, directed by David Fincher and released in 1995. The storyline is about two detectives who hunt a serial killer who uses the 7 deadly sins, starring Morgan Freeman, Brad Pitt and Kevin Spacey. There's a tilt-up shot of the dead body at the crime scene. We could also use something like this in our film to show our dead body and the crime scene. There is a high-angle shot of Detective Somerset. This could show his authority or how he is the main character. We could also use this on our main character who is also a detective. Okay, I'll next be talking about the titles, which are extremely clever and I personally love. The titles consist of extreme close-ups including books, evidence, files, paperwork, cutting the skin off their finger. This is them cutting their fingerprint off. Writing, film, coding, photographs, blood splatter, a needle and thread. All these extreme close-ups give hints and clues about what the rest of the film may be about. They also create a dangerous and criminal atmosphere which links to the genre of the film. We could use examples of extreme close-ups in our film when showing the dead body. We could also use extreme close-ups to hint what our plot twist may be about. There's many close-ups of the detectives' faces to show their reactions and feelings towards the crime scene and the dead bodies. We could use this for our detective when he is starting to realise what he has done and what he has committed, and to show his fear and confusion. There's a tracking shot used behind Detective Mills when he is walking into his office. We could use something like this when our detective is walking into the crime scene and going under the tape. Okay, moving on to the movie Zodiac, also directed by David Fincher and released in 2007. The storyline is about a San Francisco cartoonist who becomes an amateur detective when he becomes obsessed with tracking down the Zodiac killer, starring Jake Gyllenhaal, Robert Downey and Mark Ruffalo. The opening shows a long shot of the murder happening. This is of the murderer killing his victims when they are inside the car. The man is shown as a silhouette. This creates mystery. We could use a dark silhouette in our film when there is flashbacks, which a detective is experiencing. For example, in the flashbacks, the detective could be shown as a silhouette and not revealed. This would create mystery and would connect to our crime and mystery aspect. At the end of the 2 minutes, he could then be revealed, which would create a huge climax and would make the audience feel very tense. There is also a point of view shot used to show the dead bodies. We could use this when the detective is looking down and observing the body. Okay, moving on to Shutter Island, directed by Martin Scorsese and released in 2010. This film is a psychological thriller set in 1954. It is about a US Marshal named Teddy Daniels who is investigating the disappearance of a resident who escaped the hospital for the criminally insane, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Mark Ruffalo. Okay, starting off with the opening sequence. There is a long zoom shot of the location, which obviously reveals how isolated the area is, and if you wanted to escape, it would be near enough impossible. We could use this in our film as we are planning to also use an open and isolated area. Okay, now going on to the dream scene, which Teddy Daniels is experiencing. There is a short close-up of his face in a white light. This represents how he is dreaming. We could use this when having flashbacks to not confuse the audience between the crime scene and flashbacks. In between these, we could have short, quick close-ups of the detective's face. This shows the audience his reactions. We're moving on to Kill Bill, the first one, directed by Quentin Tarantino and released in 2003. The storyline is about the bride who wakes up from a 4-year coma. She then decides to get the ultimate revenge on the team of assassins who had betrayed her, a team she was once part of, starring Uma Thurman, David Carradine and Daryl Hannah. So the opening sequence starts off with a close-up of Bill's feet walking towards the injured bride, who is clearly the victim. The feet create great tension and the audience already know they belong to the antagonist. At this point in the movie, the feet are unpredictable as the viewer does not know what is coming next. We have already decided we would like to use this shot at the beginning of our film. These feet will belong to our detective who is walking towards the crime scene. There is a close-up of the victim's face. This shows how close to death she is, and it shows her weakness. This juxtaposes against what she is like at the end, as she is known as the deadliest woman in the world. We could also use an example like this in our film of our victim's face when she is getting murdered. Okay, moving on to the rest of the movie. There is a mid-size shot of a silhouette body. This creates mystery as you don't know if the bride is dead or not. We could use a silhouette in ours, as I said earlier, of the flashbacks of the detective. There is an extreme zoom close-up of the bride's eyes. This represents the flashbacks of when she got attacked. It is then clear to the audience that she has came back for revenge. This shot is superimposed to symbolise the flashbacks. The extreme close-up is of her eyes, and then laid over the top of that it is what happened when she got attacked. We could use this in our film when the detective experiences flashbacks and realises he is the murderer. This could show the realisation, fear and confusion, as well as show the audience what happened that night. There is an extreme close-up of the bride's arm around Vanita Green's neck when she is getting strangled. This makes the fighting scene more realistic and is a great way to show Vanita's struggle. We could do something similar by using quick extreme close-ups of the victim when she gets her throat slit. This would be shown in snippets. There is a bird's eye view of Vanita's kitchen and dining room. This symbolises the segregation between the bride and Vanita. This shows how they're on opposite sides and how they are enemies. We could do something similar like this with our location. There is also a high angle shot of the bride looking over Vanita's body. This shows her power and strength. We could also use this when the detective is looking over and inspecting the victim. There is also an extreme close-up of the bride's knife. We could use an extreme close-up of our murder weapon also. There is a backwards tracking shot when the sheriff and police are walking to the crime scene. We could use this when our detective is walking into the crime scene and going under the crime tape. There is a long shot behind the police looking over the crime scene. This shows the forensics working and establishes the whole crime scene. We could use this when the detective first enters the crime scene and is staring out at it. This would be used when the camera is behind him. There is a worm's eye view shot looking up at the police. You can also see the side of the bride's head. We could show examples of this when the detective is looking over the body. There is a high angle backwards tracking shot of Elle Driver. This suggests how she is a strong female character and how she has a high position on the Deadly Viper assassination squad. We could apply this in our film when the detective walks into the crime scene. There is an extreme close-up / reflection shot of the bride's eyes in the samurai sword. This reveals how dangerous her personality is. We could also use this in our film when the murderer / detective is looking into the murder weapon, which is also a knife. There is also a brilliant Steadicam or tracking shot when the bride enters the room. Breaking Bad. The storyline is about a middle-aged high school chemistry teacher who is diagnosed with lung cancer. He starts to cook and sell crystal meth, as you do, to secure his family's future, starring Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul. It uses very unusual and clever camera work. For example, there is lots of worm's eye view and low angle shots. These are used when looking up at someone or an object. We would like to include this in our film when the detective sees the body and the camera looks up at him. There is a long shot time-lapse of the location. We could use this at the beginning of our film to establish our open and isolated area, or symbolise day to night. Okay, that is the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.